ask ourselves, how should schools be designed, and what is the purpose of school now? And so much of our town hall has been exploring this like case for change, and really helping for all of us to kind of build our shared understanding of like, how has the world changed, and how have students changed, and therefore like, how does school need to change in response to that. So that is really the work of our Purpose and Design Impact Team, is to really understand how, like, the role between the design and purpose of school and the results that we're getting, and to really be able to dig in, understand some research, and to be able to present our findings to you as we move forward. So it's no longer the case that school is just about, you know, the 3 R's. We recognize, as we've shared in town halls, that it's about so much more. And so if this now is part of the purpose of school, and that is part of what we're trying to affirm, that is the case. The REACT surveys that have been sent out, where we're really asking specific questions about these areas. Do we believe that this is the purpose of school, to expand beyond just reading, writing, and arithmetic, to include education, a broader education that includes diverse learners, that includes physical, social, emotional, well-being, all of those things for students. If that is something that our community affirms, there's going to be an implication for how our schools need to be designed and how they need to function. And so that is kind of the work that we're exploring. So with the Purpose and Design Impact Team, we're looking at 4 key areas. And there are really 3 design teams that are that will be focusing on this work. There will be a design team related to student-centered learning. That's going to kind of be broken down into a group that's focusing on educational programming, so things like the kinds of courses and experience that our students have. So at the elementary level, that might be looking at our Discover programming, so like art, music, PE, what's missing, you know, from that. Looking at the middle school, at the encore experiences that students have, looking at electives that students are able to participate in at the high school, and the programming that's needed, WC Your Future programming, all of those sorts of things. That'll be part of the work of this student-centered learning team. That will also be, our course of study team will be part of that. Next year we'll be bringing the work of our science course of study team to you at the next board meeting. Next year is English Language Arts, and so that will be part of the work of our impact team, as well as looking at the integration of technology and the work of our whole, we're rebranding it to be our Whole Learner Network, but looking at those additional supports for students. And so that's one of the impact teams that will be formed. We also have an impact team related to the modern educator workforce. So you've already heard from kind of an update on that work, but that's really the work of our human capital team. There are also kind of like a couple sub-teams that will be broken out that are supporting that work as well. Modern learning environments, that impact team is going to be really connected to the board's operational committee that includes the facilities, transportation, and technology. And so that will be where most of that work is guided. And then clearly within all of that, there are partnership implications with each of those groups. And so we'll continue the work of our stakeholder groups, our partnership groups, so whether it's BAC, our PTOs, our booster organizations, the work of our Whole Child, Whole Learner Network, the work of CAC, I'm trying to think of like the rest of them off the top of my head. About FACE, the Education Foundation, all of those are existing groups that we're going to continue to strengthen and really be mindful about the role that those partnerships can play in enhancing and helping to shape kind of the future direction of each of these areas. So It's important to, all of a sudden this isn't working. Do you want to move us forward, Dan? I don't know why it's not working all of a sudden.
Try it. Nope.
There we go. It's really important to understand the interconnected nature of all of these things. If we're really wrestling with what is the purpose of school, how does that then mean it needs to be designed? Ultimately, what might that mean for West Clermont as it relates to like district configuration, for example? The work and the decisions of each of these groups can't be made in isolation of one another. It's really important that they're connected and that the purpose and design of school really drives all of the other groups. But the process that's going to kind of happen here is that we're going to have like information flowing back and forth between groups as each of our impact teams are digging into research, as they're working to learn more about it, as they're taking site visits or exploring other things like, let's just say, for example, shadow a student experiences, where we try to learn more about what is the student experience look like. All of those things will be helping to inform one another so that by the time we get to the end of next school year, we'll have a really well-rounded, integrated approach that will allow us to make recommendations to you as it relates to how we see our work moving forward in each of these areas in the future. So before we do that, we have ideas for what would be our like primary areas to address within each of these three impact teams, but we need your input as well. We need your guidance and your thoughts to ensure that as that work moves forward, we're being as comprehensive as possible. And so we thought that it would be helpful for us to spend a little time with a shared reading. So you should have two things at your table. You should have like group assignments, and we're not gonna, every person is not going to read this entire article, or we'll be here for a little while. So, so I've broken it out into like a little jigsaw activity. So what we're going to do is every group is going to read the executive summary, and that's like on page 4, like little 4, IB Roman numeral 4. So that's the executive summary that kind of orients you to. This is Learning 2025. It's their kind of national commission on what it's going to take for schools across the country to really transform into student-centered learning environments. So this was kind of their culminating report that took, many years and much input and research from lots of different organizations. So we feel like this is a pretty hallmark report that we can kind of use as guidance as we move forward in trying to create our own student-centered learning organization here in West Clermont. So everybody's going to read kind of that executive summary to just orient us to the article, and then we're going to break into 3 groups. One that focuses on the culture section, one that focuses on social, emotional, and cognitive growth, and another that focuses on resource. So you'll see the pages, pages 4 through 5 for the culture group, page 6 for the cognitive growth group, and pages 7 and 8 for the resources. The appendices are meant to just add like an additional layer of information to your section if you have time and if you so desire. So we'll just kind of watch our time, but the idea is we're going to do some individual reading. We'll do a little share out with your group, and then we'll share kind of our thoughts to the larger group. And what we want you to do is to really think about them through the lens of these impact teams. So as you're learning about what the Learning 2025 Commission had to say about creating a student-centered learning environment, what does that mean for the kind of things we should be studying and being able to recommend related to our workforce, related to steps that we would take around student-centered learning, and how we might need to ensure that we have modern learning environments across the district. So think about for your area the implications for those 3 impact teams, and then we're going to do some sharing out, and then we'll kind of share some of our thoughts and ensure that we're all moving forward together. So we'll take about I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes maybe to read the pages, and then we can kind of break into our breakout groups. to our groups.
Michael, you wanna come down?
Michelle and Jim, do you want us to come over there to you guys?
I don't care. Yep, we can-
Chairs around you over there.
Yeah, I wanna come over to you.
Okay. Yeah.
Chuck is sort of on top of each other. Sure. Chuck will come in. Turn your move. Yeah. All right, here you go. You too.
Good luck as you go to the other side of the table.
This is perfect. There were 3 circle back for you.
Yep.
We couldn't have planned it any better if we tried.
Oh.
Yeah, good. That's smart. Well, feels like, to take in.
2025 is like the magical year. Because everything for Medicare is
And it's
changing.
like in about 2 seconds, it feels like is part of the, like, 2025 scariness. So did anything stand out to you guys, as you were thinking about our work and our challenges and things that we know we're gonna wrestle with in town?
dissections, it's like there's like, it's costly, buy all the things that they dissect, it's like, well, you could like produce something online that was 3D or even printed out, like, would you be able to have more and better class offerings because you spend all that, like, it's a one-time spend, yeah, and then do the bare minimum, and it's, you know, is there to a criteria or need or a grade to ask, or even if they're not knowledgeable in it, you know, what do we need to do to bring them up to the level of our younger educators so that they're all on the same playing field and that our students are all getting that same opportunity no matter if you walk into your classroom, you know, whoever it is. You know, someone may have a don't get them right, it makes you go back and do it again, or it will give you different, like, examples to prompt your understanding, and then, so, is it something like that where, maybe they've not, and it's not a graded test, but it'll just say, hey, it looks like you might not be grasping this concept. Let's look at it this way, and then it gives you a couple more things. So, that might be something that instead of saying, oh, well, you got below a 70%, you have to take a quiz over.
We're thinking about like, we have kindergarten, we have some, has such a wide range, and it's true not only like in kindergarten, but,
Right.
across the system, where you might have kindergartners who can read, and then other kindergartners who are really still learning more foundational skills. Yeah, I mean, truly, they've never been to school
Absolutely.
before, and so here they
Yeah.
are, and yeah, they don't understand the line. So like, just because, how do you really design a system that allows for each of those needs to be met in ways that feel responsive and student-centered? I think it's a real opportunity, and it's challenging. I don't know that lots of places around here specifically have pretty good measurements around that.
Would it be helpful for, I don't know if it would be helpful for an educator to, like, how we talked about, doing a student profile and asking them how they learn or how they like it. Give that same profile to a parent that said, how do you think your child learns? And then compare those two, and then present what the student said to the parent, because, sometimes, I know as a parent, you kind of stick yourself in your kid's shoes sometimes and say, oh, well, I learned this way, so you're going to learn this way, because you're my offspring.
Right, yeah.
And it might not be, like my son learns like my husband, my daughter learns like me, I might have a completely different view of how I think my child learns, and the child's like, oh, no, I do this, and this is what I need, and it would also help, reinforcing their homework and doing things at home, understanding that, because how many parents are frustrated because their
it doesn't work. No, on the computer. And one girl got mad at me because I just wouldn't type it all in for her.
Told
I
me how to
said,
create a
you've
bookmark.
got to learn how do you think I learned? I learned without a computer, so I looked it up and you
Right.
recognize it.
I wonder if that's how some teachers use the strategy, ask three before me, and like try three different things, or, you know, just to like teach that resilience.
Yeah.
So that's just so, we're also testing, like, any of us in the same. I'm like, ask Melissa before me, I don't
mean, it's not just my house.
Exactly.
What's it supposed to do tomorrow? I'm like, you have a weather app on your phone.
It's two, what is this about? I'm just saying, there are systems in place in all our homes that will tell us.
I quit answering.
Weather apps, so many
I
ways.
quit answering.
I've done
I'm like, figure it
all
out.
the ways you can find out what the weather is today. Jim, I love hearing all the different things that you're trying in your class strategy.
It's been a struggle, but yeah, I hope I'm the ball.
You are.
When I look at 1983, when we still did report cards by hand,
You've
to
come a long
now,
way,
oh
baby.
my gosh.
Were you teaching in 1983?
How old are you? Natasha was still in elementary, she tells me,
I was a sophomore in high school.
to see this place then versus now.
I just love the fact that you have a desire to still teach and do this work. You were such a testament of their parents and longevity in this field. And you still have joy in the work. And then you want to try new things. I'm so inspired by you actually always sharing this in the classroom.
I don't think I want to do anything else. When I retire from teaching, whenever, I might go to work in fourth, but I'm not going to do it. And then I'm attached to the I can't stay there forever. It's going to be
My
sweet.
goodness. Wow.
It goes fast.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody next time. I think so, yeah. I love, you guys had such great insights, as always.
I love all this stuff. I missed my calling, but I couldn't have been a teacher. Oh, I don't think I could have been.
I've been at fun for a couple of weeks. I just got out of it yesterday.
Were you been in funk, you said?
Probably depression. Because, you know, when deaths, I had 5 deaths last year, and I've just had all this health and everything, and I thought, I took a second nap Sunday, and I felt really good.
All right.
Two naps, that's the word.
That's good. Good to know.
I had to. Well, I went to after prom to work. I didn't get home in bed till 2:30. And I went to the games.
I know, I was gonna go to our after prom and I told the ladies that were coordinating it, I'm like, and I said, I can barely make it till like 10 o'clock now with the radiation starting.
So then I stayed up because the formations aren't fascinating.
Oh, I recorded that.
So then I
Take care of them right now.
got up for a while, and I was tired again. Took another one, and then I was in bed.
Billy Idol Saturday. I was floored. 67.
Really?
Yes. And I expected not to be a good concert, and it actually was.
Pretty good.
Far away, he looked great.
So as we're all coming back together, I want to say a few comments before I turn it back over to Ellie, is just to remind everybody that we are part of this AASA network. And the whole goal of it is to really, to stretch our thinking beyond the bounds of like our team and even our state to work at a national network. And so we'll be going to the national conference where we'll see what they're called lighthouse school districts in Washington DC this summer. And the goal isn't to just to overlay this plan and use it as a checklist and say, okay, do we do this, do we do this, do we do this, it's not meant to be like that. It's really just meant to influence our thinking and to help us know like what is best for West Clermont, not to try to mimic or just take what's on the page and then make it our own. And so our goal really is just to understand like what resonates, what matches where we are, because it's a bold vision, and that's kind of what I'm attracted to, is saying by 2025, this needs to be true in your system. not let's take the next 10 years to figure this out, like 2025, because this is where like the mom in me comes out. It's like, my kid's only gonna be a senior next year. My kid's only gonna be a 8th grader next year. And they get one chance at this. So you people and schools can't take 10 years to figure this out. Like, my kids are in it now. And so like, I feel that as a mom, the urgency to not be like chaotic in our change effort, but to ensure that our kids today in our system are feeling the benefits of this in the same way that, Jack and Grace were able to talk about it tonight. Every kid should have their story, like Jack and Grace. And right now we can say some kids really have it and some don't. And that's what we really want to try to close the gap on. So I just wanted to say that as an overlay, because sometimes when you read documents, we just want to make sure it's not like we're forcing this. We're just saying this is inspiration for us. Okay, sorry, Ellie.
No, great, thank you. Okay, so these were the kind of categories or the target areas for research and exploration and ultimately recommendations for each of these. And so if there were other things that kind of bubbled up that you feel like need to be included as part of this, this would be the time to like share those. Obviously, each of our groups, we, have captured your thoughts and we can add those. But if there's something you feel like rises to the level of us sharing it for the larger group, let us know. But the impact team related to modern educator workforce, obviously salary and benefits for staff is a critical piece, especially as it relates to retention, recruitment efforts, those sorts of things. How do we continue to seek high levels of staff engagement? And so really being able to dig into the data that we've gotten from our Q12 survey, feedback that we've gotten from staff, and be able to make recommendations for what that looks like moving forward. One of the things that came up in our group was related to professional learning pathways. And so in the same ways that we want students to have more student-centered experience where their needs and interests are able to kind of drive their learning, what does that mean for our professional educators to have those same opportunities? How do we create pathways that allow for that? Is an area for us to explore. Collaboration time and kind of the need for continued collaboration time is something that is part of this work. And then thinking about like new staffing models. How, when we know as a district that we've gone all year with unfilled, many like double-digit unfilled positions, we know it's just the beginning of the challenge. So how do we continue, how do we iterate and explore and research what new staffing models could potentially look like for us? So is there anything else that you feel like bubbled up for you all? Student-centered learning, so looking at those areas related to a portrait of a graduate. How will we know, to use Grace's phrase, how will we know we're winning? What does that actually look like as a system? How will we know that we've moved from some to all as it relates to that? Looking at the staffing and programming necessary to support whole learner or whole child network, WC Your Future, what does that look like? What kinds of specials, encores, elective kinds of experiences? Right now we know there's a mismatch. So for example, at the elementary, kids don't have those experiences 5 days out of the week. And so that's just like a real small scratching the surface, but it has big implications for the ways that we can build flexibility into the school day, how teachers can leverage collaboration time and the experiences that we can have for students. So, looking at and exploring that. Schedules, both for students and staff, as well as like our district's master schedule and calendar. What are the implications for how we use time in a student-centered learning environment? Data and technology, that was something in our group that we also talked a lot about. How do you know students well, and how do you move away from like just giving assessments to like learning how to use the assessments and the information that you have around students, and the role of technology and all of that. How can we work to build more choice within our school system, both within and between our elementaries or middle school and high school, is something that we seek to understand a little bit more about. Is there anything else that you guys would add?
Well, I'm gonna speak for Michael, and you can correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, because this came up in our conversation. Two pieces kind of go together. Sometimes when you read about a more personalized learning experience, it sounds kind of willy-nilly. Like everybody's doing their own thing, spinning plates, rolling on the floor, some people reading a book in the corner, whatever. It can sound that way.
You didn't say it like that.
He didn't say it like that, but that's what I was saying. You can correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but it feels kind of willy-nilly and fluffy. And so his number one thing, you did say this, is high bar. Like,
Yeah.
I want a high bar for all students. And some of this sounds like, let's lower the bar to meet everybody where they are. And so I think that's a caution that's really important that he brought out.
And that was one of the things that I paid attention to in the article, where we're saying like proficiency is like essentially the minimum expectation for everybody,
Yeah.
and that you really like want to raise it even beyond that.
And that's
So
what we're saying, as things get implemented, you don't really know where the bar is. But like as you kind of move forward with change, you can kind of set that bar. But I think we should always be aiming to set it high.
yeah,
And it just speaks to like how hard it's going to be for us to communicate with our parents, with our families, and our educators on what this really looks like. And getting some real models that we can point to inside of our system. I know we have lots of seeds planted and lots of people working on it, but the bigger we can grow that base, so there's a proof of concept in our district, I think the better. So it doesn't sound like it's all fluff.
yeah,
Because it's not, it's rigorous. It
Yeah.
just doesn't sound like that sometimes.
absolutely. And then partnerships, just being mindful of the connection and the need for partnerships to support each of the impact areas. And so thinking specifically about WC Your Future, Whole Learner Network, families, and then as well as the other existing kind of partnership groups that we have within the district. And then thinking about the implications on our learning environment. So we know we have diverse learners and the need for diverse learning spaces, whether that's gifted and talented, English learners, special education students, and so on and so forth. What do their unique and diverse needs mean for the spaces that we need to have within our buildings? What does it look like to learn beyond the walls of school? So, things like outdoor classroom kinds of experiences or other places that students can learn within a school. So thinking about like at the high school, for example, what is kind of like a mismatch right now. We have this beautiful media center in the center of the building that's really underutilized, that really could be redesigned and reimagined, I think, to lend itself to more student-centered learning experiences. And so like that's a real kind of tangible example of thinking about learning that can happen out beyond the classroom walls, that we'll be looking at. Spaces to support things like WC Your Future. And so if as part of programming needs, it means, we were talking about like technology and things like, Jarvis, like 3D printing kinds of things. If that were something that bubbled up as like a programming need, what does that mean for the kinds of spaces that we, might need to have as part of our environments? Technology infrastructure. Third teacher is kind of a concept that refers to like those learning environments, and so thinking about like furniture, for example, in a space. How do we need to think about ways that furniture can be flexibly, can be adapted to like meet the unique needs of learning in a classroom? So like what can we learn about that? Maintenance and upkeep of our existing facilities. Like what are the implications of all of this for that? How do we ensure that we have adequate and equitable, modern and developmentally appropriate learning in spaces? We know specifically in our district preschool, and that was something that came up, the need for like early learning environments and spaces. We know that preschool is growing in our district, so what does that mean? The kinds of learning spaces that are needed. We know Holly Hill, Merwin, and the middle schools specifically have not been, are not adequate and aren't necessarily equitable as it relates to other buildings. And even our newer buildings have space challenges related to this as well. So, to wrap this all up here, these are kind of, again, with the purpose and design kind of being at the center of all this work, this is kind of how the work will progress over the next year or so. So in October and November, Dr. Fultz and his team will be bringing new enrollment data. We'll be looking at that alongside of building capacity. We'll be having conversations about learning environment and whether the need for, modulars might be something that we need to consider, whether redistricting is something like, we would need to consider. It's kind of the time when, those conversations, that new data will be available to us, and the impact of that on like short-term decisions that we might need to make will be able to be explored. Also, around that same time, we'll begin kind of our next round of town halls where we'll be having kind of a special focus on facilities and really taking a deeper dive into to looking at that. Come the new year, beginning in January and in February, we'll be coming back to you with our impact team reports in each of those 3 areas that we've been talking about tonight. That will be when those are slated. In February and March, we'll be super excited to have a State of the Schools where we're able to really showcase all of the amazing work that our students have been engaging in. And then our target date is like next spring, next summer, like a year from now, we'll be taking all of this work of all of the impact teams and really being able to then work together with you to create our next strategic plan that will really take us not only into 2025, but really to like 2030. So that feels like, whew, that's like quite an aggressive and yet I think really doable and exciting work that we have in store for the next year. All right, well, if you don't have any questions, I'm gonna hand this off to whomever
Dan
is
can
next
pull it
here.
out.
And bring it over here. Do you want the?
The next item is a line, no, I don't need it, because it's just,
Okay.
it's just that one sheet of paper. The next item is connected to everything that Ellie shared today. It's the project leadership statement for the CAC. Am I going in the right order? Okay, thanks. And the project leadership statement is all built around what is the purpose and design of our school district? What are the guiding principles that we're gonna use? And I'll use this phrase, Ford says that if he would have asked people what was needed in the world, everyone would have said we needed faster horses. Instead, we needed a car, we needed a new way of doing it. And so you can kind of connect that to, you can't just work on the problems of educational programming or staff retention or safety and well-being of staff and learning environment. You can't work on any of it in isolation, and you can't work on that thinking you're just going to tweak and kind of slightly improve what has already been true. We have to look at how do we do things differently. We don't need faster horses, we need a car. And so we need a new model that's sustainable, that attracts staff, that is truly a sustainable, enduring profession that people are passionate about and can invest their lives in, and a school experience that is really deeply entrenched in what's best for kids. That it's deeper learning, experience-based, and it provides them everything they need to be competitively advantaged, or to have the competitive advantage when they graduate. So what we've decided is that the next CAC that we will commission, we'll spend time learning about everything that you guys learned about tonight, but we'll take the year, like going really deeply on it, and we'll share additional research. We'll bring more data forward to them, and they will help us shape the next strategic plan that we bring forward to you guys. And so we would have needed a parent group to help us do that anyway, and we think, who better than the CAC to help shape the direction of the district, because we do have a big decision ahead of us. How are we going to configure as the district, and what is going to be the master facilities plan, and on which timeline are we going to work? And so we want to make sure that we're not talking about brick and mortar first, that we're talking about the design and purpose of schools and what needs to happen. We want to stay, in that order and be very thoughtful. But we will start school next year, and boom, we will start having, our architects working with us and starting to see models and starting to explore. So it's gonna feel heavy. There's a lot at stake, there's a lot to talk about, and we just want to make sure that we're bringing parents and community along, bringing you along, and that we're being very thoughtful as we are looking to 2030. Like that is where our mindset is. And we know there's not a minute to spare on any of this. Our kids' lives and their futures depend on us doing a really, really thorough job. And I know it's hard for some people because they're like, gathering all this information, all these town halls, all this stuff, what are you doing with it? Well, we are setting the course for the future of West Clermont. And we take this role very seriously. And you guys as a board have played a really critical role in where this school district goes and where this community goes, because there is a definite connection between community success and school district success. So we will ask them to learn about all these pieces, and we will continue to bring recommendations forward to them. We'll keep you informed along the way. But about a year from now, we should be looking at a master facilities plan and a master strategic plan that takes us to 2030. So we're asking tonight that you approve the project leadership statement as something that you are supportive of the Citizens Advisory Commission taking on under the leadership of Ellie and being co-led by Randy, with the support of the entire cabinet, because everybody has a piece in this. So, any questions? So I guess we need a motion.
We've heard the recommendation of the superintendent for the advisory project leadership statement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, and a second, Mr. Chumley. Any discussion or questions?
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
4 yes.
Okay, and we will be bringing to you next week, and Mike's already working on this, we have several applicants for the CAC who've come forward, and we're very excited about, new membership. We will bring those, we will work with, Ryan and Jim to determine who those names will be, and then we'll bring them to the next board meeting for you guys to vote on. We will probably not meet this summer. There might be some homework for the team to start reading and exploring. We'll probably begin first thing in August for the next research. So, okay, up next is the West Clermont Roadmap Report, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You've all been given a draft, and it's marked as draft because it's not complete, but wanted just to continue with the theme of purpose and design, transportation and facilities. This version takes a moment to go a little bit deeper. You can just kind of scroll down, Dan, as I talk. It takes a deeper dive into Portrait of a Graduate, because that's what we spent the time doing this winter in the town halls, was to understand what is the definition of all of those components of our Portrait of a Graduate. If you go down one more, you'll see there's clear definitions with each of the durable skills that are included as part of Portrait of a Graduate. Then, as you keep going, you're reminded of our 5 challenges that we are looking at. And just to remind everybody of the journey that we've been on, last year we surveyed through a REACT survey to find out, are these the 5 challenges? We wanted affirmation that yes, these were the 5. Are there any more? And we really didn't come up with more, that these are the ones. And we were really trying to figure out how much do people know about these things? How aware are they of the challenges of the buildings? Because I'll use facilities as just an example. You drive by West Clermont High School, and if that's the only school that you're seeing in the district, you would think that there couldn't be a problem with facilities at all in this school system. But, sometimes until you've driven and walked inside of Merwin, you don't realize the challenge, especially if you don't have something to compare it to if you're a parent at another school district or a school building. And so we wanted to just kind of affirm, are these the challenges? And we did get that affirmation, and how much do you know about these things? And so this season's questions are now follow-ups to all of these. Those surveys went out, I think it was about a week ago, Jeffrey, 2 weeks ago. There are 3 surveys, mostly around educational programming and safety and well-being, and we are getting a really good return rate. We spliced the buildings, so each building was divided into thirds, and we sent different surveys out, and we are ending up, we have over 600 surveys back already. And that number's growing every day. And so we will be bringing that data to the purpose and design team through the CAC and we think it'll really give us a strong indication of where people are standing on some of these decisions. which will help us out in our decision-making here. If you keep going, you'll see that this purpose and design is set up very much like the last roadmap report, in that it defines and frames our top challenges associated with the topic. And then it reflects on what are all the things that we have currently done to address it. Because it's not like we are sitting back doing nothing, just admiring these problems. We are doing things along the way. We just know that there are bigger moves that we have to make for the future to get to that 2030 plan. And so it goes into those details. And I think that's about it that's in this version. There will be more details included that will have transportation and facilities in it. And it will also share more data about like what we're learning through the focus groups, what themes and patterns are we getting? Because I think David breaks up to about 35 focus groups that have happened. And I think there's about 15 to 20 more planned this month. I could be off on my totals, but they're getting up there, double digits. And he'll be in town this week taking care of those for us. He's been doing several virtual over the last couple weeks. And so this report will give a little more of that detail. We are hoping to have this finished by Friday so that we can send it out to families before everyone's too far gone in end of year craziness. And so, again, we'll make this available on our website. We'll send it out to everyone because it's our way of just showing our our breadcrumbs as we work through this process, where we are, what we've been doing. Because truly, like, we hear people, we're listening to them, we're hearing what they're saying. We're starting to, take care of low-hanging fruit, the things that we can check off and address right away. And then we're building all these plans to do the future, the bigger lift, the bigger move that is going to require probably new learning, new resources, maybe different kinds of staffing levels, and different kinds of resources in our district. So, any questions about that? I wanted you to have it tonight so you could thumb through it if there was anything that stood out to you, but just wanted to keep you abreast of like what we're working on behind the scenes. And that, if there's no other questions, I will move to superintendent comments, and we have a flyer here tonight. Hey West Clermont, let's pack the pantry one last time this school year. So this is being run by our resource coordinators, and it's a food drive, May 15th through 19th. If you didn't know, there's a lot of financial benefits that ended at the end of March that people and our school could use for food and other hygiene products and resources. And as we go into summer, we know that what's been available over the last couple summers is not going to be available at the level that it was. And so we want to do our very best to front load and help. So the requested items are peanut butter and jelly, ravioli, soup, shampoo and deodorant, and cereal is what we'll be focusing on in this last round. Again, May 15th through 19th. And Jeffrey, is there anything else you would add?
There'll be information going on this week with students.
The canned ravioli?
Canned ravioli, yes. But I'm thinking there's even some that are like in microwavable dishes that are not quite canned. They're like, it's not quite styrofoam and it's not quite plastic, but something in between.
Can you send that to us?
Sure.
Electronically?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, we can
thank
get
you.
this out to you. Yes. And next month, we'll be bringing the candidates for graduation. We're inching very close to that. Very excited to be bringing that list forward to you on May 22nd. I know Chuck will be doing a presentation on facilities. Dan will be talking about the 5-year forecast. David will be talking about enrollment and staffing. So there's a lot going to be packed in to the next meeting that we have. So we hope everyone joins us back here. We have a full audience. Everyone's staying because there's a lot going on. That's all I have. Any questions for me? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, thank
But I'll
you.
still say.
Thanks. And the boss, regular boss soon. Those middle ones, the big one.
Take it.
Okay. Keep going to that.
So I wanted to give a little update before the board approves the 5-year forecast on May 22nd. So again, that 5-year forecast is required to be approved twice a year, once in November and once in May. We did a little bit of kind of an update in March of some things to highlight with it. I want to go back and talk to you a little bit about that. I want to do a little bit of a revenue update, talk about the state funding, talk about local property taxes and investment income that's impacting the forecast. I want to talk about a 23 budget briefly. We're basically in a 23 budget on track with our spending to as projected and predicted with it. Then I want to talk about the FY24 budget that we're putting together and some adjustments that we're making, primarily salary and benefits and with other items to do that. So with the November forecast, really kind of some good news as we did that forecast, we were able to really kind of confirm that because of the additional revenues coming in, because of the way we structured the upward and onward, that we're able to keep that levy promise and actually extend it into calendar 25 before we go back to voters with things. I think that's a real positive thing in making that commitment to do so. The big key there, is our cash flow, right? The difference between our revenues and expenses. When that line, when the levy passed, which gave a bump up into our revenues, so revenues then exceeded the expenditures, but over time, because revenues become predominantly flat, expenditures grow, that revenue line and the expenditure line cross, okay, and we start to deficit spend, i.e. our expenses are greater than the revenues. That starts to occur in 24, 25 as we get into that, and that's when we really need to start looking, because our cash balance gets eroded away with that. Back in November, these were some of the challenges that we talked about. House Bill 33, the ability for the school district to maintain its guarantee because the new SCARE funding formula, the new fair school funding formula. Scare, did I say scare?
Yes.
That's
pretty
much
appropriate.
Scares me, all right. So the new fair school funding formula, that was a good play on words. Basically told us that we were a district that had a local capacity, that more revenue to the district should be coming locally than from the state. The state basically said, hey, we're gonna give you a guarantee, you're not gonna be on the formula. So in the short run, don't expect any more funding. Okay, that was there. House Bill 1 propped up and scared everybody throughout the state because it was really looking at a tax overhaul, and there were some things that may not have been 100% thought through. It had some negative implications to the school district, but even probably more so negative implications to property taxpayers with it. There were the current economic conditions, with inflation and interest rates, supply chain issues, which, probably with Mr. LaFata and different things that are going on, people still want to use that excuse that exists today with it. Certainly, Mr. Fultz and everybody's dealing with, the workforce challenges, how to get, fully staffed. But there are, in certain communities, housing starts and some economic development that is going on, especially when you look around this community and see some construction that is taking place, which is a positive thing with it. One of the things that we also noted is there were missing essentials with the school district, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on with the CUP report. But our onward and upward program, because of the kick that the federal government gave us, we're able to mitigate some of those, put some things in place. But it's then our really ability to keep some of those in place as we go forward. What we're all kind of looking forward to, at least I am, is the 2023 reappraisal. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but how is that going to impact our revenue flow starting in calendar 24? So the end of the 23-24 year, and then, full throttle in the 24-25 year with it. So with House Bill 33, and where that's today is, House Bill 33 really moved from the House. They got it out of the House, and what took place with that. So originally, when that came through from the governor's bill, it took the governor's proposal. It gave us a guarantee, and then it also looked at providing school resource officer funding to us. As it came out of the House, what it did was it took everything that was outside the formula and said, we're going to put it in the formula. So it's not outside. We're going to put it in the formula, but we're also going to look at the inputs. And what the inputs are is the way the fair school funding formula starts, it looks at costs of a school. And every school district is unique, but it looks at those costs and it comes up with a dollar amount per pupil, okay? Those cost factors were not, went back to 2019, okay? So that was the cost inputs that were being used. The push was to update those to 22 cost inputs. When they did that, as it came out of the House, the current estimates looks like it was giving our school district a bump, okay? So when it left the House, it looked like we were going back onto the formula because those cost inputs were put in there. And as it stands with House Bill 33, as it came out, it looks like we could get about $1.4 million if that went through, okay? Again, this goes to the Senate right now. So as far as it goes to the governor's executive bill, it goes to the House. House takes it, massages it, it goes to the Senate, and they will certainly massage it too. In fiscal year 25, that's reduced down by $365,000. What is not in there, though, in 25 is any impact from a valuation increase, okay, which could substantially, depending on that increase of valuation, put us back under a guarantee, okay? So right now, what's really going on, okay, with the state funding is a lot of uncertainty because we're in between the House and the Senate, okay, and where that's going to go, okay, to do it. So the biennium budget really worked, it's moved to the Senate, okay? What do we want to advocate for with the Senate? A, keep the guarantees, okay, so that we don't get less than what we received in 2019 at a minimum. We don't want to lose money, okay? B is where and whenever possible, if there's additional funding for specific resources, our district would like it outside the formula so we have an opportunity to get more funding, okay? I will tell you that the push with the associations and other groups is not where we are at. Their push is to put it all inside the formula, okay? So I don't want to say we're at odds with it, it's just there's a difference because of our particular situation, okay, to do that. The other thing is we do want the cost factors updated, because if the cost factors get updated, that gets us closer to being off the formula, okay, with that. And then the last bullet point is to ensure that the offset calculation, i.e. if there's this formula, the offset calculation is how wealthy are you locally, okay? And that means, okay, of this dollar amount, how much do local taxpayers contribute? How much does the state contribute? And, you know, the concern always goes to there's this local capacity that says, well, if you're wealthy, you should be able to fund more of it. In order to fund more of it, you have to go back to your voters and pass levies and do other things with it, okay? So although the capacity may exist, that doesn't mean you're going to get the money to do that, okay? With that. A sort of positive thing is with House Bill 1 is I don't see that is going anywhere. House Bill is the one that had the tax overhaul, okay, with it. In House Bill 33, there was a provision to reduce the first two tiers of the tax bracket. And if I'm correct, the first tier was 0, so maybe it's just the second tier that they were reducing to do it. But it does not appear to be moving forward, which is a positive thing for us to do that. Okay, questions on the state funding, because right now it is kind of in limbo until the Senate decides what's going on with it, okay? And that could take till June, okay, with it, as we go forward. So it's not going to be in time for the 5-year forecast. So within the 5-year forecast, with the state funding, my projection will be flatlined. It'll be that we have the guarantee so that we will be receiving what we've received this current year as we go forward, okay, with that. Local property taxes, okay, so this year, 2023, is a triennial update, which basically means the county auditor looks at all the properties within our school district, within the whole county, and basically adjusts it to sales, okay, that have taken place. In November, we built in 15%, okay? We were looking at what was going on around the state. I didn't want to jump out there and put something that we may or may not get. There's a lot of uncertainty with it. 15% was conservative. New information, as the auditor put their numbers together, their submission, because those valuations have to go to the State Department of Taxation, because the State Department of Taxation really has the final say back to the counties to it. But the auditor's submission was 23%. In my mind, what that means is our valuation at a minimum is looking at 23% increase, okay? If we look around the state, okay, of what's going on, there are numbers higher than that. We don't have to look too far north, to see what's going on. I think Columbus was 30% plus. There's some other counties around us that were even higher than that, okay? There is the State Department of Taxation's kind of analysis and projection, which is higher than the 23. So my belief is that at a minimum, it's going to be 23, but could be north of that, okay? What's that mean? Well, in November, when we built 15% in, it was about $3.6 million annually that we received more than what we are currently getting. If it's 23%, we'll receive about $5.6 million more than what we're currently. That's not on top of the November forecast, that's just what we're currently, okay? Good. If it's higher than that, the numbers grow, okay, with the valuation to do that, okay? The total increase, so that, for example, if it is 23%, that 5.6 million, remember, is collected over the calendar year, so only half of it will come in the 23-24 year, okay, with that January tax distribution and settlement, okay, with that, okay? So my plan is to build in the 23% into the May 5-year forecast to do that, okay? This is like good and bad things, okay? If someone had bought a home two years ago, they probably got a really good interest rate on their mortgage. It probably was, less than 3%. Well, rates have been changing, right? So what our investment income is based off of is the Fed fund rate. If you look at the schedule here and you go down to the bottom, in March of 22, the Fed fund rate was 25 basis points, or 0.25%, okay? Since March of 22 through the first week of May, that's grown to 5%, okay? Our investment rate is pretty close to that, maybe about 25%, 25 basis points less than that. What's that mean? That means all of last year, because our investment rate was 0.25%, we might have been getting about $100,000 a year. We're probably getting about $70,000 a month, okay? So our investment income has gone up, okay? Through April, we've got 720, that's a period, there should be a comma, $722,000, okay, from July through April. We'll probably finish the year, if I add, May and June to that, we'll probably, be north about $850,000 to $900,000, okay? That's a good add, positive variance from what we were projecting last May and last November to do it. Okay, so those are the kind of the big three revenue items. What's happening with the foundation, and again, I'm going to keep that no different than what we had in November, flatline that. Okay, with the local property tax, because of the valuation, because of the new information we got, that it will go from, I will build in from a 15%, I will jump that to 23%, okay, to see what that looks like, to do that, okay? Our investment income will jump from a kind of mediocre number up to about $850,000 annually, okay, to do that, all right? When you look at the economic forecast to sometime in 24, the end of 24, 25, the recession is predicted. Okay, so who know, the interest rates may turn south a little bit then. Okay, so that's not going to last forever to do that. But by the way, you're dealing with a gray-haired elderly man that when he did investing with schools in 1980, our interest rates were between 12 and 18%. So it was a significant difference back then. So anyway. All right, I think I just went over that. State funding flat, local property will build in 23%, and then the investment income will jump that up to about 840,000. And it'll tear down after the 24 year. Okay, I'm not going to keep it up the whole time because it's a little bit of an unknown with that. All right, so what's going on the expenditure side? Again, with this current budget, we're very good on track. Okay, we will come within the projected budget that we had said. So what are we looking for 24? So on wages and benefits, there's a couple things that impact that. One is staffing. We know that our special education needs have grown. That's going to, we're going to look at teachers, going to look at paraprofessionals, also with the staffing, depending on how enrollment comes in, and those numbers are just coming in now. Okay, there are both pluses and minuses. It's always nice, when I sit in my chair, Mr. LaFada thinks I always think in the FTE world. Sometimes I do, but not all the time. But right? So,
No, I
so
didn't say that.
David and his team and our payroll people went over staffing today to look at where we are currently at and look at what was projected for fiscal year 24. There are pluses and minuses, okay? It's not all add. It's something that I like to see that I don't have to push for, especially, when we add, it's like, okay, if we add, is there any coming back? And, they put that on the table, so that's good. So there are pluses and minuses to that. But there will be additional staff built into for next year, okay? Our substitute expense for this year did go up higher than expected, but when you look at what we projected for wages and for substitute, it was really a shift from our wage to we pay the collaborative or the COG where we get our substitutes. Most of that was because of some long-term absences and or where we just couldn't fill the position, and so we had a long-term sub in there, okay? So that's been there. The real question is how do we know what the staffing is, but is it all going to be our direct hire? Or if we can't get anybody, do we have to put a long-term sub in that comes from the COG? So there's going to be a balance there between our payroll and what we do with the COG, okay? Quite definitely, I know the team wants to get the staff in. That's the most important thing to do. We know we're coming up in that 5-year projection to collective bargaining, okay, which was really all about and I'm glad that we're all talking, and I think this administrative team is really talking about retention first and then attraction, okay? And as everyone knows in the corporate world and everywhere else, it's attract and retain. Well, our focus is on keeping the good people that we have first, and then we'll go fill those positions that we have to. So that's going to be vitally important. Health insurance rate increases. I got the information on this today. It is looking like our health and drug insurance rate increase is about 6.8%. Okay, that starts in January of 24. Okay, with that rate increase. The footnote to that is that of the 10 school districts that we are with in our consortium, we're the 9th highest. Okay. That may not mean a lot of things to people, but to me, being in that consortium, you want to be close to the average. and we're not at the average, we're higher than the average. That gives me concern about the out years of where we're at, okay? So, we'll build an 6.8% into the 23-24 year, part of the 24-25 year. I will get with the consultant and get their best projections for beyond that, okay? At a minimum, the 6.8 will probably continue. The question I have is, you know, given the trend, will it trend higher than the 6.8? Or will it just flatline to continue at 6.8? Okay, so that's the concern there. On the other expenses, you know, historically, you know, over time, the rate of inflation was about 3%, okay? Well, that got kicked in the hind end in the last year or two, so the inflation rate is well beyond that. We've seen price increases, I mean, anywhere from goods doubling. You've seen that in the supermarket. You've seen that, you know, as you go shopping and doing your own. Well, the same thing happened to us too, okay, with it. So, and again, kudos to the people on the other side of the table here, because it's their job to take their budgets and do the best with it. And when things are going up 10, 20, 30% and they have limited dollars, they're doing the best they can with it. So that's good. But we'll bump up on the materials and the purchase services at a minimum, depending on the areas, 5 to 10%. Okay, not the normal 3. That's going up there. So our 5-year forecast is, we'll bring that to the board in May. As other information comes along, I'll feed that to you so you get it before May 22nd to do that. That will be what we put in the 23-24 column will be very close to what we budget and have the board adopt an appropriation measure for the 23-24 year, okay, at the June 12th meeting. So we have May 22nd board meeting, we have a June 12th meeting, and that's the only meeting we have in June, so there'll be some things loaded in there for fiscal year 23-24 and to end this current year. So you'll have an appropriation measure for next year, you'll have an amending and supplementing for this year. It's when we do all of our advances and transfers to balance things out. So it's a pretty tight time frame for having that meeting early, but we'll get there with that, okay? So that's what's ahead. So I went through that kind of fast, but I wanted to give you a heads up on what we're building into that 5-year forecast. Don't know if you have any immediate questions with it. My expectation is there's gonna, you know, the revenue and expenditure lines will change, okay, given what I went through. I don't see that we will be depleting before what we expected in 24-25, okay? But the cash balance line will change and those 2 lines will change. And it should be equal to or, you know, possibly a little bit better. One of the things we need to do is be real about what we're building into both the revenue and to the expenditures as we see it as of today. So we'll do that. Okay? Questions or?
When will we have a definitive value on that property tax?
That's a great question. So my belief and assumption is there'll be some discussions back and forth with the county and the State Department of Taxation. I think ultimately it has to be done by August. I'm hoping sometime between, it won't be before the 5-year forecast gets casted, but we can recast that forecast at any time. So when we get new information, we can always update it. Okay, with it, I believe, you know, I don't think it'll be in August. I think it'll be before that, but probably July. And I think the important thing too is that we get ahead of that, you know, with the community, and we know and understand that. Although I can tell you what the impact is to us, we also have to make sure we know what the impact is to property owners. Okay. Okay. So as I get more information, I'll send it to you. If you have questions, feel free to, you know, pick up the phone and call or send me an email or text, and we'll get the information to you. Okay. So the last thing I want to do is, I'm not going to break you up into groups, but what annually, there's the CUP report that comes out, so I'm gonna pass that out. The sheet that I'm giving you, Chuck, can you pass those down that way? The sheet that I'm giving you is the CUP report for the FY '22 numbers, okay? And I don't have enough for that side of the table, but what I'm also giving you is really the description of those items that are there, okay, with it. And one of the things I want you to do is, just for about 2 or 3 minutes, take a look at these numbers and the metrics that are there. And there's about 8 different categories. What I want you to do is take each of those categories, look over the numbers, and just take your pen and circle something that jumps out at you, okay? The first column of numbers is West Clermont. The second column of numbers is similar districts, and those similar districts are districts throughout Ohio. There's probably about 40 or 50 of them, that their demographics are similar, their property values are similar, their valuation per pupil, you know, is a little bit similar, so they put those into categories with us. If you've got any questions on the metrics, let me know, but just take each of those categories and circle something that jumps out at you. Everybody close to done? Now what I'm going to pass out to you is what this same report looked like last year. Okay. So let me show you how things have changed. So let's just jump to section E. Okay? And section E on the second page is operating expenditures per pupil, FY '22. Okay? So when I look at line 46, total operating expenditure per pupil for West Clermont, 12,281. For the similar districts, 13,651. Statewide average is 14,685. Okay, so we are definitely below both of those categories. Okay? When you look at 21 and look at section E, we were 10,424. Similar districts, 12,739, and the state was at 13,386. In 21, you've heard the superintendent and myself say that we were in the bottom 6%. That was, in 21, that was 5.6%. In 22, we've come a little bit out of the basement. We are in, this is rank order. So where we were 573 spending out of 607, we are now 481 out of 606, so we're in to the 21% range. So we moved up, okay, to get that. You know, it goes back to when we have the available resources to put into educating our kids, then we can move some things up. And probably the important things is, well, where'd that money go? How did we spend it? You know, what did we do with some of those things? Okay, as we look forward. If you look at line 45, although it's only $462, that went up 95% because the prior year we spent 237. So in staff support, so professional development, whatever training we did in supporting our staff, that almost went up 100%. Small dollar amount, but in respects to how we spend our dollars, that's pretty big. And that is a big jump in there. So pretty proud of that. So where we were in the past, okay, below similar districts, we now are slightly above it, okay, and closer to that statewide average, okay. So each of those numbers, there's different reasons why, okay, we spend what we spend, but, you know, it is, things change. Because we were consistently in the low spending, okay? That is the impact of the levy, that's the impact of some of that valuation growth, okay? That's an impact of the federal relief assistance that we're getting, okay, to do that. Okay, very positive thing with that. So just, maybe let me just throw questions out there. What were some of the things when you looked at 22 that jumped out at you? What were some of the numbers that jumped out? Anything under demographics?
That enrolled ADM.
It looks like our ADM went down almost. From 8627 to 7611, and I'm not 100% sure why. So there's always questions that we go back and dig into. It's probably closer to the end of the year enrollment, 7821, than that average daily. The one that hit me was the economically disadvantaged at 17.95% because I think it's higher. But that's what they have us at. And if we,
20, almost 29.
yeah. So, I think a lot of that had to do with, not filling out the forms because lunch was provided to everybody. And so the ability now to kick that back into play is just extremely difficult to do that.
How much higher do you think it is? Do you think it's closer to the statewide?
I think our 28 might have been low.
32.
Probably 30, prior to COVID, was it in the 30s?
It was anywhere between,
On district average is about that.
yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, district average was around 32-ish.
Yeah.
But even then,
With
like,
some
our
buildings.
message was that we knew it didn't capture everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So again, that is an important number, because that number comes into play when
The
you get
formula,
federal
which is
funding, it
why
comes
this
into
is
play
a
in the
huge
formula.
problem.
Right now, in the House version, there is a committee to go back and study economically disadvantaged. Now, I know what the intent of that study is, right? The intent of that study is, should there be more funding towards that? So if our numbers are low to what they really should be, then that's a disadvantage to us. So we've got to get that corrected. Okay? Anything out, under personnel, anything jump out at you?
Percentage of teachers with 10+ years experience.
Yeah. So that the lines 15 through 17?
Mhm.
Right. And when then you compare that to 21, right? The earlier years, we have a greater percentage of 0 to 4 years experience. And so the reductions in the 4 to 10 years and the 10+ years went to the 0 to 4 years because of that with that turnover, new teachers are in, okay? What does that help explain? When you look at those numbers, what does that help explain?
Lack of attention.
The average salary, right? Because they're on the grid. So the more people that are in the lower years, that's why if you look at our classroom teacher average salary, it went down. Okay, when you look at the similar districts in the state, they're going up. Okay, with that. So where a teacher, where the placement of our staff on that grid has a lot to do with those averages as we go forward with them. Okay. The property valuation, the dollar amount of $175,208 per pupil jumps out. That's where that's the big number that's driving that says that we are, quote unquote, somewhat of a wealthy district, okay, to do that, okay? But we're still below the state, still below similar districts as we look at that.
Land, it's gone up too.
Yeah.
Almost $10,000.
Yeah. So, and that does not include, so think about it, that doesn't include 23, but when we do the 23 valuation, if it's going up, it's there. Now, mind you, on those valuation increases, 2/3 of the state already had their, what I call a post-COVID bump. So there was a valuation in 21, that was after the sales, home values went up. There was valuation in 22, and so we're in the group that's kind of that final third of the post-COVID bump among those valuations to do that. So one other number to look at, or a set of numbers, if you go to item G on the back, okay, so most of the other information is taken off of the EMIS data, specifically the general ledger data from all the districts, but G is taken off of the 5-year forecast. And one of the things, just to help the explanation, is when we look at our salaries as a percent of operating expenditures, our salaries look low because it's 50% compared to roughly 59–60%. Our benefits seem low compared to the state and similar. And then our purchase services seem high, okay? So the big difference there is our transportation is outsourced. So about a little bit over $8 million of our transportation expense is outsourced. So none of that salary, none of that payroll runs through our books. If that was on our books, there'd be about 8 or 9% that would be added back to that on the salaries, okay? So that would put us back in line there. But that's the big difference on those numbers to do it. So as you kind of take this home with you, if you look through there, if you have any questions, feed them up to us. I can't guarantee I'll have the immediate answer, but between myself and all those good people over there, we'll get you the answer. You know what that is. The answer's definitely in the data. That's all I have. I do appreciate that you recognize the wellness champions earlier today. It's a great group of people that do a lot of hard work for everything, and just kind of looking forward to getting the forecast done, getting the appropriation measure done, and closing the books for the year.
All right. Board comments. Mr. Rudy?
None.
Mr. Beck?
I will keep it brief. I do want to thank the speakers today, the students that came out, and all the awards that we gave out today. And again, as I continue to say, I do appreciate the work that everybody puts, the cabinet, again, a well-oiled machine, and I do appreciate the work that you guys put into this. I can see that a lot of work goes into this, and I appreciate all that you guys do. Dan, thank you for giving us this information. This is always a lot to digest. This is what gets most people's attention when we start talking about money, so I appreciate the work that you do.
Hopefully it doesn't give you indigestion, but.
Not this time.
Definitely gets the wheels a turning, so again, I appreciate everyone.
Yeah, thank you for spoon feeding it to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, ditto. 3 more weeks of school for kids, counting the days. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Send them back to you.
Thank you, everybody, for your diligence, your continued hard work. And I just wanted to address the wellness champions. They all took off really quickly, but that is the hardest job anybody can do, is trying to convince someone that they need to take care of themselves and to recognize that it will benefit them. It stinks getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to the gym, or staying after, or, going after you've had a full day. As a HealthPlex user, I see our staff over there, and it is so exciting to see them taking care of themselves. And to Erin Whitehead, the coordinator of the HealthPlex, she has done an amazing job of working with their staff to come up with classes and times that will fit into our, for our teachers and our staff to take advantage of. So kudos to all of them. We do have need to go into executive session. We will be going into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, promotion, demotion, compensation, and to consider the investigation or charges, complaints against a public employee, official, a licensee, or a student. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, and a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Patton, any discussion?
Okay, Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
4 yes.
And we will
Okay.
not be returning after executive session. So good night to everyone, and our next meeting is May 22nd.
22nd. At 7 o'clock.
Okay.